In Documents Volume 7, there are several documents featured that cover the principle of baptism for the dead, which was first revealed in summer of 1840. Can you explain how this introduction took place?
Absolutely. Joseph Smith first taught the saints the doctrine and principle of vicarious baptism for the dead at the funeral sermon he preached on behalf of Seymour Brunson on August 15th, 1840. During the sermon, Joseph read from 1 Corinthians, where Paul mentions baptism for the dead and announces to the saints as their privilege to be baptized for their deceased relatives. It's not for another month until the first vicarious baptism occurs. In fact, it takes 2 more months until the majority of the saints know about this doctrine at the General Conference held in October, featured in Documents Volume 7.
So when I was editing this volume, I felt like I could really feel the people's excitement when they first learned about this new principle, that their loved ones could be baptized in the hereafter. What happened after Joseph revealed this new ordinance?
There was great excitement. In the October conference of that time, V. Lake Kimball tells us that there were between 8 or 9 men baptized vicariously for the saints at any given time during the conference. The saints were so enthused about the practice of baptism for the dead that our surviving records suggest that over 6,800 baptisms were performed in the Mississippi River before November of 1841.
Wow. It's hard to believe that that many people were baptized in such a short amount of time. I had no idea before I edited this volume. And it seems like with all of this eagerness to perform vicarious baptisms, that it wasn't the first time the saints had considered the fate of their loved ones.
In fact, even for Joseph Smith, in January of 1836, he saw a vision of his brother, Alvin. He'd been deceased since 1823, but he saw Alvin in the celestial kingdom. How could Alvin be in the celestial kingdom if the church wasn't restored for 7 years after his death? Joseph heard a voice in 1836 that told him that those that would have received the gospel, had they been alive, would also be heirs of the celestial kingdom. And so, not surprisingly, in 1840, shortly after this announcement that vicarious baptisms could be performed, Alvin was one of the first to be baptized.
That's such a touching story to me, and it shows how much this principle meant to Joseph Smith himself. But obviously, there were quite a few changes made to baptism for the dead, even after the saints started performing proxy baptisms in the Mississippi River.
I think that's so important to remember. In January 19th, 1841, Joseph Smith announced a revelation. Today it's canonized as Section 124 of the Doctoral Covenants. And in that revelation, Joseph revealed that the saints were to build a temple in Nauvoo. And specifically, they were commanded to build a baptismal font in the basement. In subsequent years, Joseph would reveal more. For example, the importance of keeping good records and for there to be a recorder in charge of keeping these records. Later, after Joseph's death, Brigham Young was the first to reveal that when a man is vicariously baptized, he should be baptized on behalf of another man, and a woman on behalf of another woman.
I think for a lot of people outside of the church, the concept of baptism for the dead is quite foreign, but it's great to learn in these documents that they considered this to be a restoration of ancient practices.
Oh, I think that's really important to remember. This is a crucial part to religious life in Nauvoo, and as part of the restoration, ancient truths are being restored again, and this is one of the very first things restored that will be later practiced in the temple.
And anyone wanting to learn more before the documents are released in Documents Volume 7 can view them on josephsmithpapers.org.